gozaimasu. Konnichiwa. Ara pinedo nijiro desu. Or in English, my name is Rainbow Pineda, as you all know. So as you can already see here today, so previously we've talked about all sorts of art when it comes to painting, physical, dance as an art, and all sorts of art. But I believe it's my turn to finish our story or section of art for our Wednesday words, and I'll be finishing off with martial arts. So, what is martial arts? So, in the definition, according to Merriam-Webster, any several acts of combat and self-defense such as karate and judo that are widely practiced as a sport. And according to Encyclopedia, martial arts are a broad range of activities that involve fighting techniques, physical exercise, methods, and etc. I don't have to explain this, so next. So, who inspired me to do martial arts? So, when I was still a young kid, these three main actors, martial artists too, actually inspired me. As you can see, there's Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Jet Li. So, while watching their movies, I've been inspired that I wanted to do something similar. I kind of wanted to be like them. But while growing up, I was trying to do Kung Fu. But unfortunately, back then in the Philippines, we weren't able to find any schools that are willing to teach kids that were my age. But fortunately, when I was 5, oh wait, I'll say that. There's actually seven people, not 3. So you can always see, first are the actors, but the last 4 is something a little childish, as you could say, because, well, they're not necessarily real, but they have influenced me a lot to continue martial arts, and they are the Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
Oh, and why the Ninja Turtles? Because, well, I don't necessarily want to be a martial artist, but I also kind of want to be a ninja back then as a kid. Because why not both? Because, well, ninjas, they were cool, they're stealthy, they don't do a lot, plus they're badass. But now I shall continue on to my story. So, when did I start doing martial arts? Well, I started with Taekwondo when I was 5 or 6 years old back then in the Philippines. Taekwondo, as most of you already know, is a South Korean martial arts that's similar to karate, but has more emphasis on kicks and spins and anything else. So as you can see, here's a pronunciation of Taekwondo. Tai refers to the legs or the lower torso, which provides the force necessary to do the kicks and spins and distance that you regularly see in Taekwondo. Next is Kwan, which as with Tei, is just simply striking with hands. So Tei essentially the legs, Kwan essentially the hands, and Do essentially means the way. So in English, Taekwondo is the foot fist way. So next. So here is a picture of me back then when I was more younger, teaching Taekwondo, learning Taekwondo, not teaching. Learning Taekwondo back then, I was still a yellow belt, and if any of you asked, there's a picture of my certificate right there just to prove that I have legit learned and taught. So as you can see me, I am right there with my other batch over there, receiving my certificate, and over there is my graduation sparring to earn my yellow to orange belt. But that was back then in the Philippines. Ever since I came here to Abu Dhabi, I actually took a switch with martial arts. I stopped doing Taekwondo and instead continued doing karate and kobudo. So what is kobudo, you ask? Well, I will explain that later, but obviously I'll start with karate since that is much more well known here. So as you can see, this is me receiving my brown belt and the certificate. And this is me and my batch doing poses during our graduation when we ranked up to our new belts. So next. And if any of you terrified to ask, yes, I am a legit brown belter, and here is a picture of my certificate to prove. So not a real bag, but just a simple proof. Next. So anyways, what is karate? As I have said, karate is an Okinawan martial arts that started back then in the Ryushu Kingdom. It mainly focused on striking, kicking, but that is just essentially the basics. But eventually, there are more advanced techniques such as grappling and takedowns. But how did karate start exactly? Well, it says here that karate actually started from the Chinese Kung Fu, specifically the white crane style or the Fujian crane. So it started to develop from Fujian crane to karate when it got imported to Okinawa. Well, I'll give a little simple known fact because back then, during in ancient Japan, Japan never really wanted to trade back then. And every time they have opponent sides they want to trade, they actually took Okinawa, which is the southern part of Japan, and that became one of the largest trading exports and imports of all the country. So while during trading or importing and trading, they must have stumbled over there and slowly developed into karate. Next is, okay, so karate essentially means empty hand weight or the empty hand weight. So kara essentially means empty, te, just like with taekwondo, hand, and do, weight. So, but just like in karate, just like in kung fu, karate also has different styles. It's not necessarily one style, but each styles are very similar, but they each share a little more special techniques to different. So as you could see over here are the different major styles of karate, so going from Goju-ryu, Kyokushin, Shinto-ryu, Shorin-ryu, Shotokan, and Wado-ryu. Now, the one that I've been personally taught was Shorin-ryu, or specifically a brand that has been internationally spread throughout called Shorin-ryu Seibukan. Yes. So, as you all know, in karate, there is this belt system. Well, now, why is this belt system in karate or any Japanese martial arts? Well, the answer is simple, as if you simply read there, but I will just expand on it. The simple part is to why reason why we have these belts is to show our advancement or how deep our knowledge is and application in the martial arts we teach. I'll be going in depth with that. So next slide. So as you can see over here is actually our belt system in general. So we have the from white belt to black belt. We have called hues, which essentially are ranks. So we start from white to black. It's the reason why it becomes white to black is very interesting and quite fascinating if you actually go into it. So we're black, and when people say we're black belts, there's actually 10 ranks of black belt. For example, like if my next job could be black belt right now, but that does not necessarily mean that I am eligible enough to teach. I still have to go through multiple ranks. Let's say, for example, you have to be a third black belt in order for you to teach your own class. Just an example, because, and not even that, most practitioners of martial arts, especially karate, actually takes them centuries and years in order to gain the highest rank, which is the 10th dan or 10th degree black belt. Next, I shall continue explaining what the systems are. So here, I shall begin. So with every beginner in karate, they always start with a white belt. Now, why is that? Well, the answer is simple. White. What does white simply means generally? Can I ask? No one? Exactly, pure. Pure. Well, we start with white because, well, practitioners, we are still pure. We are still not sure. We don't necessarily know what the fundamentals are, what karate is. So we are still pure. We are still learning. So essentially, we are at the blank state. We are a canvas, and we are going to learn. So from white belt to yellow belt. So once you get yellow belt, this necessarily means that you have already mastered the fundamental basics and now are beginning to learn the more advanced techniques. While at the same time, you are polishing the beginning. So next is the orange belt. Oh wait, by the way, I almost forgot about this. So why the other reason why I said that the belt system is fascinating because it's just like the it is just like the day and night cycle. Why day and night cycle? Because with day it starts off white and at night it starts off as black. So essentially you are maturing and growing spiritually and physically in karate. Now anyway, so just like white belt to orange belt, it represents the morning the morning rise or sunshine. So beginning of the morning, you have day, sunshine. So next is green belt, blue belt, purple belt, and brown belt. This now is more like representing the afternoon of the day, where you already in between, you are now starting to mature and understand each of your techniques. And gradually you will understand more, excuse me, you will start to learn more advanced techniques, more techniques that aren't necessarily traditional, and you will also begin to understand what are the pros, cons, and the flaws of your martial art. Next. So once you start to mature, your belt starts becoming darker and blacker, meaning that you have already gained experience, knowledge, and everything else that I have said before. So just like here, as you can already read, so I believe that I have mumbled on too much on the belt system, so moving on. Now in karate, we don't simply learn how to punch, kick, and defend ourselves. So there is such thing called as a kata. Now what is a kata, do you ask? Well, a kata simply is a Japanese term literally meaning form. It is a detailed choreographed pattern of movements made to be practiced alone, but are also practiced within groups and in unison with training. Kata are used by most Japanese Okinawan martial arts such as Aikido, Judo, Kendo, Kempo, and as we said, karate. I will be doing a demonstration soon, but that'll be later on in this presentation. Next. Okay, now I've already mumbled on with karate since most of you already know, but what is kobudo? It says here that Okinawan kobudo is a Japanese term that can be translated as old martial arts, Owe Okinawa, or it is a generic term coined in the 20th century. So in kobudo, it's just like karate, but instead of open hand, we actually use weapons. But I just want to clarify that there are two types of kobudo, mainland kobudo and Okinawan kobudo. In the next slide. Here, okay, in the next slide. Sorry. Okay, in mainland Japan, kobudo is also a martial art, but we use different weapons and different settings because mainland kobudo is actually used for killing. But meanwhile, in Okinawan kobudo, it's not necessarily used for killing, but actually used in unison with karate, used for self-defense. Now, back to the previous slide. Oh, no, wait, never mind. Next slide. So here are some of the weapons that we are trained with in kobudo. As you can see, we have the nunchaku, senchaku, and any others. So in kobudo, when you are a beginner, we usually start off with the bow staves and the nunchaku with what we usually teach. Because why? Well, first of all, they're the most easiest weapons to learn. And why easiest? Because it's easy. Well, moving on, as we continue to rank up in our belt system, we eventually start to use more deadlier weapons for self-defense, such as the pambo or sultan shield, the kama, the sai, tumfa, and etc. Next. Okay, now, why am I wearing black and white? I'm sure most of you noticed that. Well, usually in karate, we simply wear white gi, whether it's white top and white trousers. Well, in kobudo, to simply differentiate kobudo from karate is we actually wear black tops. Now, why is that? Well, the answer is quite simple. So I'm sure most of you has already read my slide. And the answer is simple. We're kind of like representing yin and yang, the forces of good and evil. A simple balance in nature, which is a simple concept that almost all Oriental martial arts that in Asia come from always has this connection with. And well, it's not necessarily wrong because well, martial arts is not necessarily a way for defending yourself, but it's actually a way of life for some people. Next up. So now I'll be actually doing demonstrations and explanations with my selected weapons here. Okay, so as I can see, now I'm sure most of you already know what this is. Okay, now as I have stated earlier, the nunchaku is one of the weapons that you learned earlier in kobudo, other than the staff. Well, I do want to bring a staff, but well, first of all, it's too long, it's kind of hard to carry, plus I might accidentally hit one of you. But unless with this, the nunchaku. Now I'm sure most of you already know what the nunchaku is. It is a weapon similar to the bow, but instead we're used to strike, strike back. Wait, calm down. I am trained with this, as you can see. But anyways, now back to the point of Okinawa being a trading hub between countries such as China and Japan. So originally these weapons.
I will be a Richard.
Okay, now these weapons aren't necessarily weapons because back then, these originally used to be farming tools by farmers. Like for example, the nunchaku here.
Alam mo yung bigas? Alam mo yung bigas? Gagawin mo yung pagka ganun na kaya yung bigas na.
Well, actually, you're not wrong because originally this was used to crush grains and crush grass. So essentially, farmers back then used to pick up grains, crush grass, and sometimes yes, they might try to hit grass. But over time, because of the implementations of martial arts from other countries, eventually this changed from a farming tool to an actual self-defense tool. Hey! But what are the implications of the nunchaku other than striking and hitting? Well, in some advanced techniques, we could actually use this for grabbing someone, hooking them back. Or if you don't necessarily want to use the whole gimmick of slicing this, swinging this around, you can simply put this together, strike, hit back, and strike again. Or hook, grab, and then strike.
Kay Robin!
I will not be striking.
Dito! Struck this! There's a weapon to eh.
Okay, Robin, just simply. It's okay, I know. Okay.
Destroy Robin's nunchuck!
Guys! No, I will not be hurting. I will simply demonstrate.
Robin, use your nunchuck!
So let's say,
Jerome, sa'yo na vape ko pag namatay ako.
Sige lang. Akin na lang yung juice mo, Robin.
okay, let's say for example, Robin tries to throw a punch at me.
Patay ka.
I already have it. It's right in my hand. Okay.
Lumapit ka! Pre, si Madara yan.
Hold on, this was
Robin, use your gun.
okay, hold that.
Sir Justin, show your wings.
Okay, Sir Justin. Okay, so let's say, for example, I am being attacked by, let's say, someone taller than me. Well, the answer is simple. Let's say, try throwing a punch at me. Slowly, sir.
Slowly, sir.
No. Okay, just try throwing a punch at me. Slowly.
Sir, knock out.
This arm, and then strike with the other hand. Go back to your seats. I don't want to hurt you. Just back to your seats. So
Tanga na,
I
akala
can
mo mamatay
simply
na
go
ako.
with back.
Pag may tatama ka, sirap na lang.
Okay, no. I think I should switch weapons now because well, you guys are too hyped for this.
Yay!
Ay, Robin, matay. Tapos katana nila mo.
Hindi, tol, meron nga. I have a question. I have a question.
Pang barbecue.
Is that for barbecue?
Well, yes, but actually no. Okay, anyways, what I have here is okay. Now what I have here is called the sai, but in English we call this the sai since usually these come in pairs. But in Japan they don't say sai, they say zai with a z to indicate that these are two weapons in hand. Now the sai is now a more advanced weapon in Kobudo that we actually train, but just like with the nunchaku, some say that this was originally used as a farming tool, but some also say that this is also used as a weapon hailing from China. Well, I am not entirely sure because, well, back then they say this used to be a farming tool because farmers would usually poke the ground and plant seeds in it, or this was simply used as
Barbecue.
okay. Or simply, when it comes to making a wheel or grinding wheels or use for wheels, they could simply use a wheel, put it into the center, and use this as a leveraging tool or an axle. But I kind of agree and disagree with that because, as previously stated, Okinawa back then was a huge trading hub. was a huge trading hub from different countries, especially China and Korea. For me, I would personally like to say that this weapon was originally used as a weapon from China. From China. But how are these used specifically? Well, back then in Okinawa, these weapons were usually used by the police back then, where they would simply grab, disarm, they would usually use to disarm the criminal and I won't say impale, but incarcerate them because, well...
Sample! On Brian! Brian!
I am not done with my sentence. Please respect the master. Okay, anyways, now I'm sure most of you have noticed that my side here aren't really sharp, but they're actually dull in the side. Now, why is that? Well, technically, this isn't, I did not dull this down. This is what an actual side is supposed to look like. Because as I've said earlier, this was used by the police back then. They didn't necessarily want to hurt the criminal that they were trying to capture. They simply want to violently poke them. Where in an attack, they would simply try to attack, strike, or disarm, and then poke them. But if they don't necessarily want to poke them, well, they have the other side here, where they would simply use to strike, block again, and actually poke them. Now I believe I have demonstrated enough about the side, and now I will start presenting to do a kata called the ninja side. This is a basic kata for the side in Kobudo when you start reading how to learn this. So without ado, I shall begin.
Pre, ingat ah.
Brian!
Teka, pre, wait lang. Asuma.
Robin, use your smoke bomb.
Palapit. Tara.
Bye-bye, Robin!
Okay lang yan, pang barbecue lang.
Pang chokes to go.
Pre, pang Marco, may bakot na ako ha. Magka.
Guys.
Get naman yung nuts.
Pre, may chakra yan. Pre, anak ni Bruce Lee to.
Pag ano ha, may magbubog sa inyo ha, may tatawagin.
The demonstration and explanation. Now, I'll moving on to my final topic about this presentation. Now, as you can see here is a link to a article or website by one of the people that I actually admire who also does karate and kobudo. Now, if you would just open. No, wait. There's a jar. Why kobudo never became popular? Because, well, who actually just heard the martial art kobudo just now because of my presentation?
Everyone.
Exactly, because, well, karate is more popular. Now, for my final presentation, this is an article written by Jesse and Cap. As you can see right over there to the right, that is the name of the author, a fellow martial arts enthusiast, a karate veteran too. So, just like, okay, so here in the introduction of the article, he simply explains that why kobudo never really became popular such as karate, because he simply explains because karate and kobudo are like siblings or twins, where they are always together, but why is it that karate is more popular than kobudo? If you scroll down. So these are his points that I would simply like to expand upon. So the first one is, Kobudo is hard. Because unlike karate, you're simply using your open hands, you're following what your mentor is telling you, but it's hard because, well, instead of using hands, you're actually learning how, with weapons, you're learning how to defend yourself with weapons, and usually you have an object with your hand, and you have to do it carefully. Second is, Kobudo is expensive. Well, it's quite obvious because, well, you're actually learning how to defend yourself with all sorts of weapons, and ordering them and getting them properly, and not even that, there is something, there might be limits, or it might not be allowed in your country where you are trying to get it. Now, the fourth one is, Kobudo is not physical enough. Why is that? Well, it has been explained that it's not physical enough because, well, when we practice or train in Kobudo, we don't necessarily use these weapons quite fast, like quite as fast as we used to, because, well, we do it slowly, especially if you are a beginner. In that way, you're not necessarily learning how to strike or block, but you're simply learning how to use this weapon properly and effectively without hurting yourself. So during my demonstration a while ago, you saw me strike, block, and strike again. But, well, for a new person learning Kobudo, they don't do it as much fast or as efficiently as I did. They simply slowly move to strike, block, then strike again, without trying to hurt themselves. So that is one of the reasons. So as you could also see right here, he made a simple equation when it comes to why Kobudo isn't physical enough. So body plus weight in hands equals more physical than body minus weight in hands. So you are mostly focusing more on your hands and not necessarily on more of your body. Next point is, well, Kobudo is kind of like more for geeks, exactly. And for the last 2 points, I'll like to elaborate because, well, first, Kobudo is for geeks. I won't necessarily say for geeks, but if you're particularly into martial arts such as karate, like as myself right here, you kind of get to learn Kobudo eventually if you start off from karate because, well, as I've stated earlier, that karate and Kobudo are like siblings or twins. They go hand in hand. But since karate is more popular, Kobudo has become less popular. Now, the final point is, Kobudo is not practical. Well, yes, but actually, no. So, if you could show that. So, okay, here's an example on why. So, I was walking into the pub the other day, right? When this huge guy flipped out and came at me, swimming at me, I quickly sidestepped, pulled out my sai from my back pocket, and blocked his attack with my left side. Do you see where I'm going now? It's not really practical or effective because, well, in a country like UAE, which is one of the most safest countries, do you think I could simply walk around with this in my body? No, right? Exactly. It's not. I won't necessarily practical because, well, you have to carry these weapons around. Sometimes it's not necessarily approved by publicly, so you might simply get arrested or warranted. But I won't necessarily say that because, well, in some Kobudo weapons, you can actually use your fundamentals in those weapons. Like, for example, I learned the nunchaku. If I can't use a nunchaku, I could simply use a sling bag, for example, where both techniques simply reach out to one another. It simply connects. Like, what's the good? Does anyone here have a sling bag I could actually borrow? To simply prove my point.
Sling bag.
Is it okay if I borrow that? To prove my example?
Pre, tanggalin mo.
Okay, so here's the example. So in Kobudo, we learned previously, this is back, then Chaco, where we could simply strike and go back. But I could simply use the same motion with a simple sling bag. Don't worry. I can simply back. That's it. I'm just simply showing an example on what I mean.
Mamaya may lumilipad na ano.
So, So that's it. Now those are some of the reasons I'm not done. I'm not done. Wait,
Guys.
So I would simply end off with a quote: "As you think, so you shall become." So whatever you put your mind into it, whatever you focus on it, soon you'll become it. That's all.
Isa pang sample kay Brian.
Hey Brian, anong sample?
Dapat
That's all. Thank you.